Do you believe that a tie for Sanders is just as good as a win?
Yes, especially in Iowa, where Hillary really staked her campaign. Like she pretty much bet her entire campaign on winning Iowa, which is precisely why I think they declared victory before it was called. Because if they didn't, they would have had no justification to go on. So, and again, I'm not saying that it was something deceptive. They all have their own, like, decision desks, as it were. And I imagine that it was either a mistake or a miscalculation or something, or just that it's hard to predict Iowa, even if you're using high-tech statistical models. I do think this will help, but I don't know if it's going to help that much, because Bernie is going to still win New Hampshire like he was always going to win New Hampshire, and Clinton is still going to win South Carolina like she was always going to win South Carolina. The question is, if she ties Sanders in South Carolina, I don't know if Clinton will make it to Super Tuesday, frankly.
Well, right now Sanders is polling well over 20% in New Hampshire. Do you think that he can pull off a win that big, Josh? And if so, then how does that change the dynamic going into Super Tuesday? Mind you, one or two more debates after this week.
The debates are, I think, huge. They cannot be understated, the importance of them, especially if Clinton comes off looking bad or like she's lying, or if Bernie ends up looking bad somehow by, getting impassioned about a topic and then looking like he's being a dick to Clinton or something like that. So the debates could, again, throw a wrench in everything. But I do think he can pull off a pretty big win in New Hampshire. But remember, if he was polling like 5 points over Clinton and won by 10, that's a story. But if he's polling 20 over and then wins by 10, he underperformed. See, so that's sort of how the narrative fucks everything up when you're looking at primaries, because there's two stories. There's the story we're telling ourselves about the candidates and what's happening on the trail, and then there's the path to the nomination. And Hillary Clinton already has a third of the superdelegates, and so she has an advantage in the nomination part of it. So those are the two things to be watching. Like, what is unfolding on TV, that's nice, and that's the interesting story. That's what we'll remember. But it's the delegate counts and the path to actually getting, and the number, of course, is escaping me at the moment, but the number they need to win the nomination at the convention.
Well, Peter, Iowa, New Hampshire, these are states where these guys spend 7-8 months just trying to court every single voter. Now it's going to get really fast, and then come March 1st, it's just all the states going. So do you think that a win in New Hampshire, a tie in Iowa, can help propel him to win some of these places where he can't spend all this time trying to compete for voters?
Well, that's the big money question. The expectation is he's going to win in New Hampshire, and he should win, easily. Somehow that doesn't happen. That's a huge change. The real question is going to be how much momentum he can carry forward and what that's worth. We all know Hillary has the ground machine. She has extraordinary amounts of money. She hasn't even started the serious mudslinging that is always part of her campaigns against Bernie. I don't know what she's got to sling there, but she'll find something.
Probably the socialism angle.
I think it's that folk
she can
album
do that.
he made.
What's that?
He made a folk album a while back. It's pretty good.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. I'm sure there's some groovy pictures from the '60s with him with long hair and stuff
and he
like
still
that.
Looked like he was 70 in them.
And the question, is whether all the punditry about who Sanders' base is going to hold up or not. I was reading an article today that was suggesting that his strong play is with white people, and obviously Iowa is pretty white as states go. That Hillary generally is favored to carry more of the African American vote, and that'll take her through South Carolina and the South in general. I hope that Bernie gets the momentum he needs here. It's going to be very, very difficult to beat her. at the core game, which is, as Josh was pointing out, the delegates. I mean, there's a very good chance Hillary is just going to sit back and say, fine, you bastards, don't vote for me because I've got this gamed out and I'm going to get the delegates and, we're keeping score out there. We know who you are, with your so-called message votes for Bernie. We'll be watching.
Well, the race was pretty close in about every county, every possible statistic except one, which was voters under 29. Bernie Sanders won 84% of voters under 29. Josh, do you think that he can continue to bring out enough young voters? Because clearly he's resonating and then some.
I think that yes, I think he can. And I also think that Hillary Clinton's attempts to connect with sort of the youth vote, whether it's, trying to yuck it up with Lena Dunham or dancing on Ellen or whatever she thinks works, I don't think that that's sort of going to play well. Whereas Bernie, just sort of like what what Barack Obama did when he was running in 2008. It's the message. Like, you get all hyped up about the message, make it seem really important. Give them the "we are the people we've been waiting for" line, and you will own young people throughout the election.
And then you lose the election.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. Like, Obama was able to turn them out. If Sanders can't turn out the youth vote, at least to match where Clinton is stronger, say in African American communities, among like middle-aged white women with college educations, things like that. But then again, who knows? The demographics can shift because on the Republican side, that was sort of the interesting thing about the Trump's coalition of actual voters was that they were all over the place. So, maybe if Sanders is able to somehow break through the sort of demographic politics that we go through, he may not need to rely on young people so much, but his message still needs to resonate and energize people. But staying on message is the thing he does best.
I think
going back to this rallying the youth thing, I mean, there's a long history of that in presidential politics, and that's why I cut in and said, and then he loses the election. I mean, you go back into the Vietnam era, and you had Eugene McCarthy, who inspired the youth, and who did he lose to first?
McGovern?
I think it was he lost out to McGovern in the primaries, and then Nixon goes on to win the general election. We can skip around. Ralph Nader was a perennial candidate for president, energized the youth, never got anywhere, probably played the spoiler a few times. I mean, Ron Paul is a perfect example. There was even this guy named John Anderson. He's kind of a trivia question answer right now, but he ran as a third-party candidate in the Reagan-Carter election. And again, it was very popular on college campuses, had a message, and like I said, disappeared. And remember his name because you might win something in bar trivia night from it. So the difference, Obama is a little different in the sense that, remember, he was running after George Bush. And so he was, really he was going to win, a Democrat was going to win that. And Obama brought out a huge percentage of African-American vote that normally doesn't come out. He crossed over into young people, women. I mean, there was so much groundswell to elect somebody who wasn't George W. Bush that we got to give him a half a pass in this whole strategy. I have this worry that Bernie is just going to be another one of these, what he started out to be. He started out, I think, to be a message candidate. He was going to run for election long enough to get a little national attention, get his points on income inequality out there, maybe pull Hillary a little left, and then he was going to, fade away. And I suspect that is what we're going to see, particularly as we roll through Super Tuesday.
I have a question then for this, or maybe it's a comment to add on. I would say that I don't think Bernie Sanders will be a message candidate because, and maybe I'm speaking there I'm born in, but I would like to think that students today are a lot worse off in the modern economy, and that's not delving into economics, but school is a lot more expensive than it used to be. Baby boomers just won't retire, and so I think students today have a lot more to gain through a Bernie Sanders presidency than they ever could gain in a Hillary Clinton.
Good point.